There is a quiet confidence rising across Africa. You can feel it in its trade deals, its alliances, its choices. BRICS did not create this shift. Africa's ambition did. But BRICS is becoming the space where the ambition is finally taking shape. And now the world has to adjust to a continent that's no longer playing small. This moment is defined by Africa's growing influence, and the opening chapter starts with a truth that's reshaping how the world sees the continent. Hello everyone and welcome to Africa Insights with Hikmah. Today we're breaking down a topic that's shaking up the global economy and putting Africa right at the center of it all. For decades, the world's financial system has been ruled by the US dollar. But now, things are changing fast. If you're curious about how this financial revolution works, make sure to hit that like button and subscribe for more, and let's get into it. Let's rewind to 1944, Bretton Woods, New Hampshire. World leaders gathered to create a new financial order from the ashes of World War II. The deal was simple. The dollar would be pegged to gold, and every other currency also would be pegged to the dollar. America was the world's largest gold reserves, and the only major economy untouched by war became the center of global finance. But the real power move came in the 1970s. When the US abandoned the gold standard, it made a brilliant strategic pivot: the petrodollar system. Oil, the world's most crucial commodity, would be traded exclusively in dollars. Suddenly, every nation needed dollars, not as a choice, but as a necessity. To buy energy, you needed dollars. To participate in global trade, you needed dollars again. The Federal Reserve essentially had the power to print global purchasing power. Today, the dollar makes up 58% of global foreign exchange reserves. Nearly 90% of all international transactions touch the dollar at some point. This is unprecedented financial hegemony. But empires don't last forever, and the cracks in dollar dominance are starting to show.
BRICS state that even mentions the destruction of the dollar will be charged a 150% tariff.
2009, the first BRICS summit. Brazil, Russia, India, China, and South Africa, five emerging economies representing 42% of the world's population, sat down with a shared frustration. The global financial system wasn't working for them. But what started as an informal dialogue has transformed into something far more powerful, and 2023 brought change that started to reshape the future. August 2023, BRICS announced the admission of 6 new members: Argentina, Egypt, Ethiopia, Iran, Saudi Arabia, and the United Arab Emirates. The expanded bloc now represents 46% of the global population and over 37% of global GDP. But the real headline was about what they are building, not about who joined. The BRICS New Development Bank, launched in 2015, has already approved over $100 billion in loans, not in dollars, but in local currencies. China and Russia are settling bilateral trade in yuan and rubles. India is buying Russian oil in rupees. Brazil and China have established direct currency exchange mechanisms. In 2023, the yuan surpassed the dollar as the most traded currency in Russia. Saudi Arabia, America's longtime petrodollar partner, is now accepting yuan for oil sales to China. The United Arab Emirates is building as well yuan, clearing houses. The de-dollarization is already here. Now, to really see why Africa matters so much in this story, we need to take a closer look at one of its biggest secrets: a currency system so controversial, so deeply tied to neo-colonial control. The CFA franc, Africa's most debated currency. A key point to remember is in 2025, 14 African countries still don't have full control over their own currency. This legacy runs deep, and it's exactly why BRICS holds the key to unlocking Africa's economic future. The CFA franc is a financial holdover binding 14 nations in 2 monetary unions. 8 countries in West Africa and 6 in Central Africa share this system. Together, they represent more than 180 million people waiting for change. When African countries gained independence in the 1960s, France made them an offer they couldn't refuse: keep using a currency controlled by Paris or lose French financial support. Most had no choice. And here's how it works. The CFA franc is pegged to the euro. Previously, the French franc. The exchange rate is fixed, but the kicker is these African nations must deposit 50% of their foreign exchange reserves in the French treasury, in Paris, not in their own central banks. 50% of their reserves, money earned from their natural resources, their labor, their exports, sits in France. They need permission from the French treasury to access their own funds beyond a certain limit. Imagine if the United States had to keep half of Fort Knox in Beijing and needed Chinese approval to access it. The outrage would be unthinkable, yet this is the reality for 14 African nations. Critics call it monetary colonialism. France claimed it provides stability, but consider this. Countries using the CFA franc have constantly lower growth rates than comparable African nations with their own currencies. Ghana, with its own currency, has outpaced CFA countries. Rwanda, after abandoning the French sphere of influence, experienced remarkable growth. And this is where BRICS enters the story with explosive potential. For a long time, African countries had few choices: either stick with the dollar system controlled by the West or struggle without strong alternatives. But now BRICS is offering a real alternative. After the 2023 expansion, over 40 countries have expressed interest in joining BRICS. At least 20 of them are African: Algeria, Nigeria, Senegal, Zimbabwe, the DRC. The list keeps growing. But why? What makes BRICS so attractive to African nations? It would be the infrastructure investment without conditionality. When the West lends money, it comes with strings attached: privatization demands, political conditions, and a lot more. BRICS, particularly China, through the Belt and Road Initiative, offers infrastructure investment focused on tangible development. In Kenya, a Chinese-built railway connecting Nairobi to Mombasa, across the continent, ports, roads, telecommunication networks, physical infrastructures that drives economic growth. And then comes trade in local currencies. Instead of losing value through dollar conversion, African nations can trade directly with BRICS members in their own currencies or in yuan, rupees, or African currencies. Nigeria, Africa's largest economy, has announced it will sell oil to India in naira and rupees. No dollar involved. Kenya is also exploring direct currency swaps with China. The trend is accelerating. Now let's ask what happens to the CFA franc if African nations have a genuine alternative. If Senegal, Cote d'Ivoire, or Cameroon can trade with the world's second largest economy without dollars or euros, if they can access development finance without French oversight, if they can hold reserves in a basket of currencies rather than in Paris, why would they maintain a colonial-era monetary system? France knows this, which is why in 2019, President Macron announced reforms to the CFA franc for West Africa, changing the name to ECHO, reducing French representation on the board, ending the requirement to deposit reserves in Paris. But as of 2024, most of these reforms remain on paper. The fundamental structure remains unchanged, and more importantly, African youth are not buying it anymore. Of course, the West is not sitting just watching its financial dominance erode. Western media portrays BRICS as unstable, internally divided, economically incoherent. They point to tensions between India and China, to Argentina's withdrawal from BRICS membership, to economic struggles in South Africa. And look, they're not entirely wrong. I mean, BRICS faces real challenge. India and China have border disputes, that's right. The economic range from middle income to developing, creating a unified currency or payment system among such diverse nations is extraordinarily complex. The dollar's share of global reserves has declined from 70% to 58% over 2 decades. Significant, but still the dominant reserve currency by far. The infrastructure of dollar hegemony, swift payment systems, banking networks, financial institutions represent decades of entrenchment. Realistically, we're not talking about the dollar's collapse tomorrow. The United States still has the world's largest economy, most powerful military, and most liquid financial markets. Those advantages won't disappear overnight, of course. What's undeniable is that the trend is clear. The momentum is shifting, and Africa represents the decisive battleground. Think about it strategically. Africa has 1.4 billion people, projected to reach 2.5 billion by 2050. The continent holds 60% of the world's uncultivated arable land, vast mineral resource including rare earths, essentials for technology, and represents the last major growth market on earth. Whoever wins Africa economically wins the 21st century. And right now, the West is offering Africa a system built in 1944 for a world that no longer exists, with colonial-era monetary arrangements that belong in a museum. BRICS is offering something different, imperfect, evolving, but built on the promise of multipolarity and mutual respect. The choice facing African leaders is becoming clearer every day. So where does this path lead? What might the world look like as the dollar's dominance naturally evolves and Africa deepens its connection with BRICS? Picture a future where the global finance landscape embraces diversity. Over the coming decades, the yuan, rupee, and possibly a BRICS-backed currency stand alongside the dollar and euro, creating a rich tapestry of trade and finance across regions. For Africa, this means exciting new possibilities. Nations gain greater freedom to engage with multiple partners, opening doors to fresh opportunities and balanced relationships. The CFA franc stands at a turning point, evolving to better serve the people or giving way to new sovereign currencies tailored to each nation's vision. Now imagine the pace picking up, a moment when the world's dynamic shifts accelerate. BRICS could introduce innovative common currencies or cutting-edge digital payment systems, empowering African nations to take confident steps forward within a vibrant new financial ecosystem. Experts see this as a time of change full of opportunity, where creativity and new ideas are blossoming everywhere. Across Africa, people are not just keeping up, they're leading the charge, building regional payment systems and embracing digital currencies in ways to honor tradition while looking boldly ahead. And the best part, Africa is not simply adjusting to the future, it's shaping it with its own unique vision and energy. If the future of finance is digital, decentralized, and multipolar, then Africa will be leading the way. This story reaches far beyond dollars and cents. Sovereignty, dignity, and the power to shape the economic future of nations all come into focus. For 80 years, the world's money system was built around American power. This system helped millions escape poverty, made trade easier than ever, and created huge wealth. But it also gave too much power to a few, kept many countries dependent, and left much of the developing world without control over their own money. Take the CFA franc, as I mentioned earlier. It's still being used in 2025. African countries have to keep a big part of their money in Paris. This currency shows the problems of the old system, that past hasn't gone away. BRICS, with all its challenges, offers something new, a chance for African countries to have a real say, to find other options, and to help change the world order. The choices Africa makes now will shape the future of money everywhere. The dollar is still important, but its hold on the global money is changing. Africa, rising strong after years of struggle, is helping to write the next chapter. The future is being built today in many countries across Africa, where people are taking back control of their own economic future. The dollar's power is shifting. Africa and BRICS are changing the game, and we are watching history happen. What do you think? Is de-dollarization unstoppable? Should African countries, move beyond the CFA franc? Tell me your thoughts in the comments, and make sure you are subscribed for more deep dives into the African story reshaping our world. Thanks so much for watching, and see you in the next one.